turn now to the tributes pouring in for Grammy-winning R&B singer D'Angelo, dying at just 51 years old after a battle with pancreatic cancer.
D'Angelo's death has left the music world stunned, but what's surfacing now isn't just tragedy, it's transformation. The headlines barely scratch the surface of what really happened in those final months, and the truth changes everything. Because behind the silence, there's a story only a few people ever knew, and I've got every detail they never meant to share. Silent storm. The world woke up to heartbreak. D'Angelo, the voice of a generation, the architect of neo-soul, the man who redefined intimacy in R&B, was gone. 51 years old, dead in New York City, pancreatic cancer, the words alone didn't compute. It wasn't just the loss that stung, it was the silence that preceded it. The revelation that the same man who gave the world his heart and song had kept his suffering locked away until the very end. Fans weren't just mourning, they were reeling. Because how could the man who made vulnerability sound divine hide something so human?
We got some sad news in the music world.
So this was pretty shocking for a lot of people to find this out yesterday. So R&B and soul singer D'Angelo passed away at the age of 51.
The music industry froze in disbelief. Social media became a rolling memorial. Questlove posted a black square. Maxwell wrote that, "The world dimmed today." Erykah Badu, always cryptic, simply tweeted, "He returned to the source." Tributes poured in faster than anyone could process, all orbiting around the same emotion, shock. For decades, D'Angelo had been the mystery man of music, the recluse, the perfectionist, the artist who disappeared just when we needed him most. But this was the final vanishing act no one saw coming. What's haunting is the way his family found out. Sources close to the inner circle say D'Angelo's diagnosis had been known to only a handful of people: a private doctor, a caretaker, and one longtime friend. Even his bandmates didn't know. Kadar Massenberg, his former manager, confirmed the news through tears. He didn't want sympathy. He didn't want anyone to see him as sick, he said. And that right there captures the paradox of D'Angelo. The man who built his career on emotional exposure, yet couldn't bear to let anyone witness his decline. But this silence wasn't cowardice. It was control. D'Angelo had always lived on his own timeline. 14 years between albums, years off the grid, 0 interviews, every move was intentional, and this final one, it was no different. By keeping his illness hidden, he ensured that his art, not his illness, would be his final message to the world.
From the music world, R&B legend D'Angelo has passed.
Even in dying, he was curating the narrative. As the world processes the loss, fans are beginning to notice something eerie. The clues were always there. In interviews from the Black Messiah era, D'Angelo talked about feeling time differently, about energy shifting. Nobody paid attention back then. But now, every word feels prophetic. Every lyric feels like a goodbye we didn't recognize. The question lingers: was he trying to tell us? Or was he protecting us from knowing too soon? One thing's certain, D'Angelo's silence wasn't absence, it was authorship. And today, we're reading his last chapter in real time. Hidden battles. D'Angelo's battle with pancreatic cancer wasn't just secret, it was surgical in its concealment. This was a man who understood visibility as a double-edged sword. Fame had already sliced him once. After Voodoo dropped in 2000, he was supposed to ascend into Michael Jackson-level superstardom. Instead, he vanished. Fans speculated: drugs, depression, burnout. Few realized it was a deeper wound. The infamous "How Does It Feel" video had stripped him bare, literally, and turned him into a sex symbol against his will. The camera made him an object. The public made him a fantasy. And D'Angelo, he wanted to be an artist.
So sad news to report this morning. D'Angelo, neo-soul icon, music icon, 4-time Grammy-winning singer, songwriter, and producer, has passed away at the age of 51 after a private battle with pancreatic cancer.
That tension between art and image haunted him for decades. The same vulnerability that made his music divine became a prison he couldn't escape. And when the world demanded more, he retreated. Behind closed doors, he was rebuilding. Physically, spiritually, emotionally. Now we know, he was also battling the first whispers of an illness that would eventually destroy him. Pancreatic cancer is cruel. It creeps quietly. By the time symptoms appear, fatigue, jaundice, pain, it's often too late. For D'Angelo, the timeline now being pieced together by family sources suggests he'd been in treatment for years. He was strong, but he was tired, one insider revealed. He wanted to keep making music, but his body wasn't cooperating anymore. And yet, he did make music. Black Messiah wasn't a comeback. It was a resurrection. Released in 2014, it felt like a revolution. The album dropped in the middle of social unrest, echoing the pulse of protest. But now, in hindsight, it reads differently. The urgency in his voice, the apocalyptic tone of tracks like The Charade, the exhaustion that bleeds through the production, it all sounds like a man aware that his time was limited. The silence after Black Messiah was deafening. For nearly a decade, fans begged for updates. Interviews went unanswered. Studio sightings were unconfirmed. What no one knew was that D'Angelo was enduring treatments, chemotherapy sessions, surgeries, pain that defies imagination. He'd appear fine one week, vanish the next. His absence wasn't laziness or artistic temperament, it was survival.
Don't settle for nothing small, because nothing should be small this season. Top Dog fights for real results, big cases, big wins, and you don't have to pay them a dime unless they win for you. It's a free consultation, no pressure, just real talk about what your case could be worth.
So when the news broke this morning, it wasn't just about death, it was about deception, but the gentle kind. The kind meant to shield, not to mislead. The kind born of love for one's art, one's family, one's dignity. D'Angelo didn't hide from the world out of shame. He hid because he wanted the world to remember him as he was, not as he became. Industry pressure. The truth about D'Angelo's disappearance is that he was suffocating, not from illness, but from expectation. The music industry adored him, but didn't understand him. To labels, he was a product. To fans, he was salvation. To himself, he was just a man trying to find peace between notes. After Voodoo's success, executives wanted a sequel, something glossier, faster, more marketable. But D'Angelo didn't work like that. He worked like a monk, slow, deliberate, obsessive.
The tributes tonight are far and wide. Singer and actress Beyoncé writes that he changed and transformed rhythm and blues forever. In a statement tonight, his family says that he died after a prolonged battle with cancer, and it was pancreatic cancer, which is hard to catch early.
That conflict between art and commerce became a war zone. He didn't want to chase trends, he wanted to chase truth. The industry called him difficult. In reality, he was uncompromising. Every chord, every breath had to mean something. You don't rush a sermon, he once told Questlove. You wait for the spirit to move. But when the spirit didn't move for 14 years, the world lost patience. That pressure broke something in him. Sources close to D'Angelo describe long stretches of isolation. He'd write songs for months, then delete everything. Perfectionism mutated into paralysis. When he finally resurfaced with Black Messiah, it was because the world itself was in crisis. Ferguson, police brutality, racial unrest, the moment called for his voice, and he answered. But fame doesn't forgive long absences. Even in 2014, critics questioned his relevance. Can D'Angelo still matter? One headline asked. The irony now feels cruel, because Black Messiah wasn't just relevant, it was prophetic. The same critics who doubted him now quote him like scripture. Yet behind the brilliance, he was quietly unraveling. Pancreatic cancer feeds on stress. The body turns against itself. And for D'Angelo, whose art was his body, whose entire identity was physical expression through sound, that battle must have been hell. He couldn't separate his pain from his purpose. Every note hurt, every lyric drained him. And still, he refused to let the illness define him. When his team begged him to rest, he'd say, "Rest is death." The irony is unbearable now, but it also explains everything. Why he vanished, why he stayed silent, why he chose privacy over spectacle. The industry that once demanded endless output is now left mourning the silence it created. D'Angelo didn't just die of cancer, he died of everything the music industry refuses to acknowledge. Exhaustion, exploitation, the myth of the eternal artist. His death is an autopsy of an entire system that eats its profits alive. Disappearing act. Every generation has that one artist who turns their absence into legend. For the 90s, it was D'Angelo. He didn't just disappear, he evaporated. After Voodoo, the world expected a follow-up within a year or two. Instead, years stretched into decades. Fans crafted myths. He's living in the woods. He joined a cult. He's in rehab. Some of it was true, some of it wasn't. All of it built the folklore that now surrounds his name like incense smoke, heavy, fragrant, and impossible to ignore.
He'd been battling pancreatic cancer. In his statement, his family wrote this, that a legacy of extraordinary moving music in terms of what he left behind. And they also asked fans to celebrate the gift of song that he has left for the world. When it comes to his albums, he won 4 Grammys.
But behind the mystique was a man exhausted by being mythologized. The How Does It Feel video. His masterstroke turned curse changed everything. That shirtless shot, that slow spin, that look of spiritual surrender, it made him a sex god overnight. The problem? He never wanted to be one. The objectification gutted him. During tours, fans screamed for him to take his shirt off mid-performance. It broke him, one crew member admitted. He'd pour his soul out singing and all people saw was abs. So he retreated. He stopped performing, stopped answering calls, stopped being D'Angelo. Friends say he'd vanish into rural Virginia, playing guitar in small churches or sitting alone by rivers, writing songs nobody heard. Some call it madness, others call it survival. He was detoxing from fame, from lust, from a world that confused his vulnerability for vanity. And yet, even in disappearance, he loomed large. Every artist who whispered about soul and pain was walking a path he carved. His absence became part of his art. Each rumor, each sighting, all of it fed the mythos. Fans weren't waiting for an album, they were waiting for resurrection. When Black Messiah finally dropped, the comeback felt biblical. The world gasped. He was alive and angrier, wiser, deeper. But the man behind it had changed. Gone was the smooth-talking, silk-voiced charmer of Brown Sugar. In his place was a prophet, battle-scarred, paranoid, but still brilliant. He told interviewers, "You've got to die a few times to live right." No one realized he meant it literally. Now, after his death, those missing years make sense. The disappearances weren't just artistic choices, they were health crises, recovery periods, chemotherapy phases disguised as solitude. What fans called mystery was, in truth, agony. He didn't ghost the world, his body ghosted him, and that's the tragedy, and the world mistook survival for secrecy. His silence wasn't arrogance, it was grace. Every retreat was an act of preservation, every reappearance a resurrection, every song a pulse, and now that pulse is gone. The world just wasn't ready for the idea that D'Angelo's greatest creation might have been his absence itself. Final sessions. It's now confirmed. D'Angelo was working on new music until just weeks before his death. That revelation alone has sent shockwaves through his fan base. Hidden hard drives, unfinished demos, late-night sessions whispered about but never confirmed. All real. And the word among insiders is that what he left behind is staggering. One source close to his engineer says, "It's not scraps, it's an album, maybe his best."
D'Angelo has passed away at 51 after a long battle with pancreatic cancer. And for those of us who grew up with his music like myself, this one hurts.
But here's where the story takes a darker turn. D'Angelo was fiercely protective of his work. He believed in intention, that nothing should be released unless it was ready. So the family now faces a moral war. Honor his perfectionism or honor his legacy? Do they let the world hear the unfinished brilliance he left behind, or do they respect his silence one last time? This debate is tearing fans apart. On social media, one side chants, "Let us hear it," while the other pleads, "He wouldn't have wanted this." It's déjà vu. Another chapter in the never-ending saga of art versus ownership. But this time it feels more sacred, because D'Angelo wasn't like other artists. He wasn't chasing charts or clout. His songs were scripture. You don't release unfinished scripture. What makes this discovery even more poignant is what those closest to him are saying about his final months. He was working through pain, said a studio tech. There were days he couldn't stand for long, but once the mic was on, he'd find energy that didn't make sense. He'd lay down a verse, collapse on the couch, then whisper, "Again." It's hard not to imagine those recordings. A frail genius singing through pain, knowing time was running out. And that's the cruel symmetry of his story. His first album was about youth and seduction. His last might be about death and transcendence. A full circle written in soul. The kind of ending that feels too poetic to be coincidence. The family's official statement says there are no immediate plans to release the material, but insiders believe conversations are already happening. Record labels smell opportunity. Fans smell betrayal. Everyone's waiting to see who wins. But the truth, D'Angelo might have already answered this dilemma himself. In one of his final interviews, he said, "Some songs aren't meant for the world. Some are just for the spirit that made them." Maybe that's his message to us. Some art was never meant to be consumed, only to be mourned. Sacred legacy. D'Angelo's death didn't just end a life, it canonized one. Within hours, streaming numbers exploded. Brown Sugar climbed back into the top 10. Voodoo trended globally. Every lyric was being dissected like holy text. The man who once fled fame had become immortal overnight. That's the curse of genius. You spend your life running from attention only to be trapped in eternity by it.
He wasn't just another R&B artist. He was the blueprint for neo-soul, a sound that carried the rawness of funk, the intimacy of gospel, and the rebellion of hip-hop.
But beyond the numbers, something deeper was happening. The neo-soul community, his chosen family, was fracturing under the weight of grief. Questlove couldn't finish his tribute post. Erykah Badu hosted a live stream meditation. Maxwell canceled his show mid-performance, breaking down as he tried to sing Pretty Wings. This wasn't performative mourning, this was spiritual. They weren't just losing a friend, they were losing their center. D'Angelo's influence was everywhere. Without him, there's no Frank Ocean, no The Weeknd, no Anderson .Paak. He made it cool to sound vulnerable, to sound black and soft and radical all at once. His art gave men permission to cry, and women permission to feel powerful in their sensuality. He blurred lines the industry didn't even know existed. And now, without him, those same lines feel empty. Music historians are already writing the eulogies. Brown Sugar redefined R&B's groove. Voodoo redefined its soul. Black Messiah redefined its politics. Each album was a manifesto disguised as melody. Together, they tell the story of a man trying to save his own spirit through sound, and sometimes losing himself in the process. In Richmond, Virginia, murals are already appearing. In Brooklyn, fans lit candles outside the music hall where he last performed. Across London and Tokyo, DJs are spinning full-night tributes. His death feels global, but also deeply personal, because D'Angelo didn't just make music you listen to, he made music you remembered yourself in. And yet, even in grief, fans are starting to understand the true meaning of his reclusiveness. He wasn't hiding from them, he was hiding for them. He didn't want to be remembered frail or dying. He wanted his last image to be music, not medicine. That's why his death hits differently. It's not just about what we lost, it's about what he protected. His privacy, his dignity, his divinity. He left us his voice, but never his vulnerability. That, in the end, might be his final masterpiece. Industry reckoning. The wake of D'Angelo's death has ignited something bigger than grief: accountability. Artists are beginning to speak out, not just about loss, but about the conditions that lead to it. "We're killing our own," said Jill Scott in a tearful Instagram Live. The industry doesn't care about wellness, it cares about output. Her words sliced through the music world like truth wrapped in thunder.
He wrote, arranged, and produced his own work. He was a perfectionist who took his time, often disappearing from the industry entirely, only to come back with something that sounded like nothing else. His last album, Black Messiah, wasn't just music. It was a protest, a sermon, a reminder that Black art has always been political, even when it's dressed in velvet chords and bass lines.
Because she's right. D'Angelo's story isn't unique, it's emblematic. The endless demand for content, new albums, new tours, new streams, leaves no room for health or silence. His long disappearances were treated like crimes, when in reality, they were cries for rest. Imagine what might have happened if he'd felt safe to say, "I'm sick," one producer lamented. Would the industry have let him heal, or would they have leaked it for clicks? This is the reckoning D'Angelo's death demands, not just mourning genius, but re-examining the machinery that exploits it. He once said, "Art is sacred, industry is not." That quote, now resurfacing everywhere, has become a rallying cry. Musicians are sharing stories of breakdowns, exhaustion, and burnout. D'Angelo's ghost is forcing an entire culture to confront how it treats the people it worships. And in that confrontation lies the paradox. The same fans who now grieve him also demanded his return. Every "Where's D'Angelo" tweet, every impatient think piece, all of it added weight to a man already buried under expectation. Fame isn't freedom, it's surveillance. But if there's one silver lining, it's that his death has shifted the conversation. Labels are being pressured to provide wellness support for artists. Streaming platforms are donating to pancreatic cancer research in his name. Scholars are planning retrospectives on his artistic rebellion. Even in death, he's still forcing change, the same way his music did. D'Angelo once sang, "Send it on," and maybe that's the message now. Send on the care, the compassion, the understanding that artistry doesn't require suffering to be authentic. If the industry learns that from his loss, maybe his pain won't be in vain. Eternal soul.
His family saying that he died after a battle with pancreatic cancer and that the shining star of our family has dimmed his light for us in this life. We are saddened that he can only leave dear memories with his family, but we are eternally grateful for the legacy of extraordinarily moving music he leaves behind.
As the vigils burn out and the tributes slow, one thing remains unshakable: D'Angelo's presence. It lingers in the air, in the bass lines of new artists, in the candlelight flicker of every soul record spinning tonight. Death didn't end him, it amplified him, because legends don't die, they deepen. Richmond is planning a memorial concert titled The Return of the Soul. New York will host a tribute show where musicians from every genre will perform his songs backed by a gospel choir. But perhaps the most fitting tribute comes from the fans, millions of them, playing Untitled, How Does It Feel? In silence, realizing that the song that once made them blush now makes them cry. There's a cruel symmetry in that. The same song that exposed him to the world has become the anthem of his departure. The vulnerability that once cursed him is now his redemption. Maybe that's how D'Angelo wanted it, full circle, soul to soul. And when you listen closely, his legacy becomes clear. D'Angelo wasn't just a musician, he was a mirror. He showed us our contradictions, our lust for beauty, our hunger for truth, our discomfort with honesty. He reminded the world that black art could be political and sensual, divine and damaged. He proved that taking your time wasn't weakness, it was integrity, the final irony. D'Angelo died quietly, but he lived loudly. He lived through sound, not fame, not spectacle, but vibration. And that vibration will never die. So as fans light candles, as radios play his voice one more time, there's a strange peace in the chaos. Because maybe, just maybe, he knew exactly what he was doing. He left while the music still mattered. He disappeared before the world could consume him again. He gave everything, and in that giving became eternal. In the end, D'Angelo's greatest act wasn't a song, it was silence. He turned privacy into poetry, pain into purpose, and left the world searching for meaning in the spaces between his notes. His voice may have faded, but his rhythm remains. In every artist he inspired, in every heart he healed, in every truth he dared to whisper. D'Angelo didn't just make music, he made memory. If you felt this one, hit subscribe. Not for gossip, but for gratitude. Rest easy, D'Angelo. The groove continues, but the world just got quieter.